to announce that our next author is Marilyn Meredith. She was one of the first authors we ever had way back in, I don't know, 2002, 2003 over at the old store. And she's always been a staunch supporter of us, and she hasn't really been in that often, but I think she lives in Springville, so it may take a little bit of time to get here. But she's always talked us up well, and we've had a great conversation. So, Meredith is the author of the Deputy Tempe Crabtree mystery series, as well as the Rocky Bluff P.D. series. She, as one of the first authors to embrace e-publishing, she has several books that are both available in e-format and the trade paperback. Among them is the award-winning mystery Guilt by Association. She also writes the Christian horror, an up-and-coming genre that I've seen here at the store. And she has also has a chapter in the bestseller, The Portable Writers Conference by Quill Driver Press, who, when that came out, that was in Sanger, wasn't it? And now it's in Fresno with Lindy Publishing. As a writing teacher, Marilyn has been a featured speaker at several writers' conferences and is a member of the Mystery Writers of America, Sisters in Crime, EPIC, and the Public Safety Writers Association. She has served as an editor of the California Residential Services Association monthly newsletter and as a freelance writer for the Tule River Times in Springville, California. So welcome, Mary.
I think you better update my bio.
There's more?
Yes, a lot of that stuff I don't do anymore.
Oh, you have one?
Yes, I have.
Okay.
I'm actually going to talk about both my series just because I have new books out in both of them. Some people ask me, how can you write 2 books a year? I can't tell you how I can do it, I just do it. And sometimes it's harder than other times. Sometimes it's easy, sometimes it's not. Right now it's not been easy because my computer broke just before I went off with Billy to WordStock. And it just about drove me crazy. I just got it back yesterday. Yesterday morning, he was working with me at the, from the service place on my computer, which is fun to see what they're doing, and they're not even there. First, I want to talk about my Rocky Bluff novel. This is the one that Billy publishes, this series. And the latest one's called Dangerous Impulses. And what I tried to do when I first started writing this series was to show how what happens in the family affects the job, being a police officer, and what happens on the job affects the family. I used to live in a neighborhood with all kinds of police officers, and we partied with them, and I hate to tell you what we did, but it's funny. So we had the most parties in our backyard because we had the biggest backyard, and we also had a nice big family room. And we had an alley. And the fellows that were coming to the party that were working would drive down the alley, and we'd hand them a cup of beer so they could keep up with the party. So by the time they got there, nowadays people don't do this anymore. But, I'm old, and this was a long time ago. And I'm almost ashamed to tell it because I don't even drink anymore, but that's what we used to do. And I really got to know these guys and their wives. I coffeed with their wives, our kids all played together. And I began to pick up on things that were happening. We know what was happening in the town because it was small. And then I'd see how it's affecting the family. And that's what I was trying to portray when I started writing this series. It's set in a small beach community, made up one. They call it Rocky Bluff, but it's kind of like where Carpinteria would be. It's not Carpinteria because I've changed everything. I've changed the geography. I've changed the town itself and how it looks. And I moved it a little closer to Ventura County because I know more about Ventura County. And when you're an author, you can do things like that. You change geography and move things around. I have ongoing characters in this. It's kind of like some people said it's sort of like a soap opera because in each book the family situations progress and change, but whatever murder or crime is in it is solved by the end of the book. So I think each book kind of stands alone. I'll read just a little bit. The favorite character of most people who read this book is a police officer called Gordon Butler. And nothing ever goes right for that poor guy. And I have had more fun writing about him because it's more fun to write about somebody who has problems than somebody that everything's hunky-dory. But I've had a lot of people say, please, let Gordon find a love, because his wife ran off with another police officer. That happened a while ago. And then he has other romances, and they don't turn out very well. So I started this book off with Gordon. Officer Gordon Butler couldn't believe his good luck. First, because he'd been assigned a new hire. Even though he knew everyone else on the Rocky Bluff P.D. thought Chief McKenzie had lost his mind for making such a decision. Second, Officer Lizette Gibbs was gorgeous. Though still suffering from a broken heart, Gordon thought his chances for healing had finally improved. He stole a side glance at her. Shiny black chin-length hair framed her golden skin profile. High cheekbones and full lips glowed with natural color. Her name gave no clue to her ethnic background, but she was some kind of mix. Gordon couldn't tell how much might be Hispanic, Native American, Far Eastern, or Anglo. Whatever, she was flat out gorgeous. She must have felt her scrutiny because she glanced over from her place in the shotgun seat. Is it always this quiet during the day shift? To be perfectly honest, 90% of the time, yes. How do you keep from getting bored? I hand out lots of traffic tickets, Gordon laughed. Once in a while, something more interesting happens. I wanted to work in a bigger city. Lizette peered out the window at the rows of orange trees. I applied to about 20 places, but when I got called for the interview here, I thought, being between two fairly large cities like Ventura and Santa Barbara, there could be the possibility for some action. Finding out Rocky Bluff is a beach town influenced me too. I love the ocean. While Gordon drove, we pointed out all the various neighborhoods, the mostly dilapidated rentals on the beachfront, the downtown area that ended on the north side at the undeveloped area by the creek near the bluff. He traveled to the south side with an upscale seafood restaurant at the far end. He showed her the older neighborhoods that climbed the hillsides and the orange groves and ranches on the east side of the 101 that nearly covered the foothills. He turned toward the more populated sections. I'll show you the ritziest part of town next, up on the bluff. He passed the freeway exit and entrance. I managed to catch quite a few speeders here. I hope to do more than hand out speeding tickets. Lizette sounded disappointed. I think Milligan has her eye on you. Gordon still forgot to call Stacy by her maiden name, as did many of her other co-workers. Why? I couldn't quite figure out what her job is. Sometimes she wears a uniform, sometimes she doesn't. She covers all the vice crimes. Being the only female officer we've had for a while, she's kept pretty busy. That would be okay. I wouldn't mind helping her out. Do you think I ought to talk to her? Before he could answer, the dispatcher's voice came over the radio. See the men concerning a missing teen. She gave a name and an address. Lizette jotted them down while Gordon let the dispatcher know they were on the way. Where is that? One of the apartment houses over on the south side. Gordon switched on his light bar, but not the siren. There wasn't enough traffic on a Tuesday morning after 10 to warn her siren for a missing teenager. The kid probably spent the night with a friend. Well, he didn't. He was murdered, and so was his mother. And that's kind of the beginning of the story. There's also a party that goes on that all the friends of this kid that was killed are at, and they're poisoned by some kind of drug that they take that somebody bought off the internet. And that's probably enough to tell you about this one. My other series is set in a place sort of like where I live, Springville, but I call it Bear Creek because same reason I moved it up in the mountains another 1,000 feet because I wanted better trees and less rocks. That seems to be what we have mostly is rocks. And also some weather. I wanted to have maybe snow sometimes and just more interesting weather than we have. This one's called Spirit Shakes, and it's a perfect story for Halloween because it's full of ghosts and I would say goblins, but there is no goblins, but ghosts and evil spirits and a little bit more. And I'm going to read I should tell you, my heroine is a Native American resident deputy sheriff. And through the years, she's learned more and more about her heritage. So when she first began, she really didn't know much of anything about being an Indian. And as time goes on, she's been schooled by a local Indian who works in actually his girlfriend owns the Paperback Inn. This could have been a prologue, but lately I've been reading you shouldn't have prologues, you should just make it your first chapter, so it is my first chapter, but it would have made a perfect prologue. But I like to do whatever everybody says I would be happy, sort of, sometimes I do just the opposite. Oh, and the character in here, some of you may recognize her name. I had a contest for people that were following my blog. The one who commented the most could be a character in my book, and so this person is, some of you will know who this person is. The icy atmosphere settled over Lauren's bones like a shroud. The spirits are already making themselves known even before she stepped inside. She shivered, but smiled. The haunts in this place, the Wilkinson House, should please her group of ghost hunters. The last two places she guided these enthusiasts had been a bust. The evening began perfectly. Everyone arrived a few minutes before 9. Low clouds settled over the mountains. Looming up from atop a hillock, the two-story structure peered at them through darkened windows. The only light came from flashlight beams as the ghost hunters approached and climbed the rustic steps created from railroad ties. Lorna gathered the group on the porch to give her instructions. Each person who came on this ghost hunt had been required to read and sign an agreement. The first rule was to keep an open mind. Participants could bring cameras and audio or visual taping devices. Phones could be on, since many used the cameras in their cells, as long as the ringtones were silenced. There are other rules, such as carrying proper identification in case someone noticed the lights in what was known to be an unoccupied structure, and sent law enforcement to investigate. Since all other houses were located at least a half mile away, Lorna wasn't worried about that kind of interruption. The quieter we can be as we move around, the more likely we are to hear or to be able to take any strange noises or voices. You can take as many photos as you like. There are two types of spirits we may encounter. One, someone who was alive at one time and has remained on this earthly plane for some reason. The ghost might not realize he or she is dead. Or perhaps it may have some unfinished business. These spirits could be good or bad, depending on what kind of person they were when they were alive. A slight murmur rose from the group. Don't worry, they aren't dangerous. You might also witness what is called a residual haunting. This is an echo of something that happened at another time. Lorna paused. I am obligated to tell you that though I've yet to encounter this kind of spirit, there are those that were never human. They are malevolent, and some might call them demons. Again, the group whispered among themselves. I'll tell you right here that there's all this kind of ghosts in this house. Because of that unlikely possibility, we'll take a few seconds to put ourselves in the right frame of mind. If you are a religious person, say a prayer of protection. Lorna bowed her head and counted to 10. Okay, here we go. Explore your heart's content. Oscar Lopez and Andrea Cruz in their 20s both made the sign of the cross. Though they claimed not to know each other before the first get-together, they shared an interest in writing. Oscar said he was a novelist and Andrea a reporter for the local newspaper. An obvious spark ignited between the two. Keith Sanders and Rachel Bayless stood together. In fact, Lawrence suspected the teachers might be romantically involved, though they did their best to hide it. The only one by himself, 60-something, Maurice Frawley, seemed the most unlikely to have an interest in ghostly sightings. But he turned up for the last 3 tours. Lorna advertised in the local paper. Like the others, he didn't seem to mind handing over the $50 charge for each event. Wearing worn overalls, a plaid shirt, and a straw hat, Frawley looked more like a farmer than the local historian he was known to be. Lorna had toured the site several days ago with Babs Allen, the realty agent. This was their first venture in the dark. The Wilkinson House had been designated as haunted for a long time. After Lorna had told Miss Allen about her reason for wanting to visit the structure, the woman opened up. We have several vacant houses around Bear Creek with reputations of being haunted. I agree the Wilkinson House is the most likely to suit your purpose. Why do you say that? Margaret asked. It was built in the early 1900s and has been unoccupied for long periods of time. When someone does purchase or rent the place, they never stay long. Do you know the reason? Though it was obvious the young woman was reluctant to reveal anything that might squelch a sale, she sighed and finally relented. I don't know much about the earliest years. Obviously, I wasn't around then. She smiled. What I do know was a few residents blamed their quick departures on the fact that they had to share their abode with ghostly beings. Enough proclaimed that the same reason for the word to spread. After all, what is more fun to talk about than a haunted house? She dropped her shoulders. I doubt I'll ever be able to load this place unless, she gazed hopefully at Lorna, you plan to do something to get rid of all the ghosts. Lorna told her, I'm sorry, that isn't what I do. All she intended while on the tour was to see or feel anything that would validate the theory that ghosts inhabited the Wilkinson House. After unlocking the massive front door, Lorna pushed it open. The hinges creaked eerily as if pre-planned. She guided the group into what she knew from her earlier daytime visit was the living room. Lorna entered first. The temperature dropped even more, causing her to shiver. She inhaled deeply, knowing sometimes you could get a sense of history of the house from the lingering scents. Cooking smells always remained in the walls. Underneath the faint scents of apple pies, cabbage, garlic, and onion, she smelled something she couldn't quite identify. A strange mustiness. Come on in. Lorna held the door open as the 5 guests entered. Step carefully, keep your flashlights on. The real estate agent assured me there are no hazards, but you never know in a house like this that has been empty for a long period. The moving beams from the many flashlights cast eerie shadows and distorted faces as everyone followed Lorna. Oscar clasped Andrea's hand and the young couple started toward the staircase. The others headed off in different directions. Light streaked through the darkness, catching a silvery spiderweb, briefly illuminating the moving ghost hunters. Lorna felt an incredible yearning, a palpable sadness. She sensed dreadful events had happened in this house. In minutes, a shrill scream came up from upstairs, followed by Oscar Lopez shouting, Miss Collins, you better come see. We found something horrible. Of course. That's probably enough for me to read. Is there anybody would like to ask any questions? Yes.
Did you research real ghost hunters when you
Yes.
You did?
Yeah, I went to see what kind of rules they had and things, and they all, at least the ones that I found, I've had people sign things, you know, that they were taking responsibility for whatever happened while they were. And I love ghosts. I mean, I've stayed in a whole bunch of haunted houses. I've never actually seen any, but you know, if we stayed in a hotel called the Bella Major in Ventura, and the first time we stayed there, we didn't know anything about it. But when I was reading their information, they said that room 17 was haunted. So the next time we called, I said, I'd like to stay in room 17, and they said, well, do you know that room's haunted? I said, yeah, that's why I want to stay there. We did not get a visitation, and my daughter said, well, Mother, the reason is the ghost is a prostitute. If Dad had stayed there by himself, he would have seen the ghost.
Missed again.
Anything else?
No,
Our house actually is haunted too. I mean, I have never seen a ghost and was not the least bit afraid of grandkids that would not sleep in a separate bedroom. They had to sleep in our room. And doors open and shut all the time by themselves. I can't tell you how many times I've heard the back door open and I've hollered, who's there? And there's nobody. Now I'm used to it, so I just didn't pay attention. I don't think ghosts can hurt you. Now, some of the things that are in this book could. I don't think real ghosts can hurt you. They're still hanging around. Anything else? Yes?
How many books do you have now?
You know what, I can't tell you. I know that I've written over 35. Some have never seen the light of day for a good reason. Some I've just kind of lost. You know, when I started out writing, it was of course with a typewriter, and then I went to floppy disks, the real floppy disks, where you had to put one disk in. Probably some of you don't even know this, but you put one floppy disk in, and then you put a floppy disk that was the program. And those, you know, you can't even get anything back from those anymore, so I threw those all away. And then I have others that are on those little square things. Well, my computer doesn't have a thing for, you know, square disks, so. Now there's better ways to save things, thank goodness, but probably those books weren't very good anyway, so it doesn't really matter. I think every time you write, your book is, you know, the next book is better than the one you wrote before. I've had people tell me that this book is the best one, this one is the best one I ever wrote, and then the ones that really follow this series told me this one's the best one I ever wrote. So I do think you get better and better as you write. Anything else?
Are you a plotter or a pantser?
A little bit of both. I always know, for one thing, it's easy because I already have my main characters for both series. I know that I have to write something about each of these. In this one, I picked different people to kind of be the star. Wouldn't let me spend the star too much, so I've got to switch and have somebody else be the star. And it's kind of happening with the next one that I'm going to send. In this one, it's always going to be Tempe and her husband, who will be the main characters. But I have to decide who I'm going to kill and why that person should die, you know, and what people might want to kill that person off. So I have to develop those characters, and I'm going to do that first. And then I'm going to things start popping in my head, and I keep a notebook. I know that people keep notes on their computer, but I can't do both. I mean, I write on the computer. I actually compose right on the computer. But I always have a notebook over here with the characters' names written down. I know it's kind of an archaic way to do it, but it's what I've always done, so that's what I'm going to keep on doing. And things will pop in my head, well, I need to have this happen, I need to have that happen. But as far as plotting out the whole book ahead of time, no, I don't do that. But I do get ideas that if I didn't write it down, I wouldn't remember. The older I get, the harder it is to remember that kind of stuff. So. Anything else? Yes, Philip?
Did you write down that bridge that we crossed?
Oh, no, I forgot the name of it. What was the name of it again?
Wasn't it Jump Off Joe Bridge?
Jump Off Joe Bridge. Can you imagine? So I will have to put that in. Right fit better
Isn't that a great? That's a great.
And somebody else over here was acted like they wanted to ask something. Yes?
Do you ever keep like a hard copy of your novels, or is everything like saved on your computer or on a thumb drive or something?
Well, I print it out when the publisher sends me a book, you know, to go over. I always print it out. I don't just do it on the computer because you just don't see things on the computer like you do on a printed copy. Do I keep it forever? No.
You don't?
No. Once the book is published, that's what I keep.
Okay. Because I have these stacks, you know, I'm like, do I really need these?
No, I used to back up, you know, to print other stuff off. Like when I'm going to my critique group, and I still do that, and thank God I have a critique group, and most of you guys do that too. Because I print off a copy for a chapter for everybody that comes to the critique group, and I kind of use them as my first editor, and then I need somebody else after that, because what we found out, God love Billy, she's a good editor, but if she gets caught up in the book, there's things she doesn't see. And I had some of the funniest errors in my last book, and I sent it off to, she did some arcs, and I sent one off to gal. Her name is Michelle Parent. Maybe it was this one. Was it this one?
Yeah, it was good.
Yeah, it was this one. Now, I got some really good things from people, but nobody noticed some of the things she did. And she said, would you like me to mark the pages that have mistakes? And I said, yes, please do. And and she sent it to me, and I had things like names of cars wrong. I always ask my husband, what kind of a car should I give so-and-so? She's like this or he's like that. He'll give me the name of a car. Well, I don't know anything about cars. And he said, what was it was an Ultima. But I thought it was spelled Ultina. And it got in the book. I mean, it was in the book. Nobody else spotted it except this Michelle. And I'm telling you, the next book I finish, I'm going to send to her because she was really good at seeing things nobody else saw. Michael Orduff, who's a wonderful writer. He said, I found one mistake. Same book. He said, I only found one mistake. See, that's what happens when people get caught up in reading. If they really like the story, they just don't see that stuff, and including yourself. You know, you get to reading it and go, well, this looks good, and you just don't notice the mistakes. Your eye corrects it. You know what it's supposed to be, although I didn't know that it was an ultimate, not an ultimate.
I tried to speak plainly.
Pretty funny. Anyway, anything else? Good baby. I think that I'm through.